15-year cardiac surgeon Dr. Demetrius Thompson had saved thousands of lives at Atlanta's most prestigious hospital. But when the surgical assistant nurse said she would rather die than be healed by a black doctor's hands, Demetrius faced a choice: stay silent and continue the surgery, or put an end to this racism. Demetrius's response became the beginning of a change that would be talked about throughout the medical world. Welcome to Stories of Black Lives. Before we begin these powerful stories covering respect, justice, and hope, please let us know in the comments which country and which city you're watching us from today. If you want to see more stories like this, hit the subscribe button. Please don't forget to like our video. In the heart of Atlanta, Emory University Hospital was bustling as usual on the morning of Tuesday, November 15, 2023. Emergency room rush, nurse shift changes, doctors moving quickly between patients, just as it should be in one of America's most prestigious medical centers. But what would happen in Operating Room 7 that morning would force not just one patient, but the entire American healthcare system to confront its racism problem. Dr. Demetrius Thompson arrived at the hospital at 6:30 a.m. At 42 years old, tall, with a confident posture, everyone greeted him with respect as he walked down the corridors. He had been working at the same hospital for 15 years and had performed over 3,000 heart surgeries during this time. His success rate was a 98.7%, well above the industry average. He was one of the most experienced doctors in Emory's cardiac surgery department. Demetrius's story wasn't a typical American success story. He had grown up in a poor neighborhood in South Atlanta in a single-parent household. His mother was a cleaning worker, and his father had left the family when Demetrius was 8 years old. Annie Thompson worked 2 jobs day and night for her son to get an education. "You're going to be a doctor," Annie would say every evening. "Someone from this family needs to be white-collar. You're going to be that person." Annie's dreams were big, but her means were limited. She worked 16 hours a day, cleaning offices in the morning, washing dishes at a restaurant in the evening. She counted every penny for Demetrius's school expenses. Books were secondhand, clothes came from charity organizations, but she never compromised on education. During his high school years, Demetrius stood out with both his academic achievements and athletic abilities. He was the best in his class in mathematics and science, while also being the star of the basketball team. But he found his true identity in having to live as a black person. He was often the only black student in class, constantly feeling the need to prove himself. "You're different," his teachers would say. "You're not like other black kids." This was meant as praise, but Demetrius understood how destructive it actually was. It made him feel as if he had to deny his race to be successful. When university applications started coming in during his senior year of high school, his guidance counselor called him over. "Demetrius," she had said, "you're a very talented student, but medical school is very hard. Maybe you should set more realistic goals." When he went home that day, his mother saw him crying. "What happened?" "Son, the school counselor told me to give up on medical school." Annie stood up and looked at her son's face. "You are my son. This family doesn't give up on anything. You're going to be a doctor, period." From that night on, Demetrius worked even harder. By the end of high school, he had received acceptance letters from 12 universities. When the full scholarship offer came from Morehouse College, Annie almost fainted. "My dream is coming true," she had said. At Morehouse College, he studied pre-med. Morehouse, a historically black university, provided Demetrius with a safe environment. Here he wasn't questioned because of his race. He was evaluated solely on his talent. Professors mentored him. Friends worked with him instead of competing against him. For the first time, he truly felt at home. At Morehouse, Demetrius not only developed academically but also discovered his leadership abilities. He became student body president, organized community service projects, volunteered at local hospitals. At graduation, he gave the valedictorian speech. "We're not just working for ourselves, but for those who will come after us," he had said. When applying to medical schools, his professors at Morehouse encouraged him. "You're our pride, Demetrius. Go and show the world what a black doctor can achieve." He had received acceptances from prestigious medical schools Johns Hopkins, Harvard, Duke, Emory. But he chose Emory because he wanted to stay in Atlanta, to be close to his mother. Also, Emory's cardiac surgery program was one of the best in the country. At Emory Medical School, things completely changed. Here, only 4 black students were in his class of 120. On the first day, anatomy professor Dr. Richardson had said, "Some of you came here through diversity quotas. But medical school is not a charity. Those who don't work will be eliminated." His eyes had turned directly to Demetrius and the other black students. From that day on, Demetrius worked twice as hard. He had to be not just good enough, but the best. Because he knew that every mistake would be attributed to his race, and every success would be said to be thanks to affirmative action. He studied alone in the library at night, spent weekends in the cadaver lab, constantly took notes in classes. By the end of the first year, he was at the top of his class. But even this wasn't enough for some. "You're lucky," his classmates would say. "Standards are lower for minority students." These comments drove Demetrius crazy, but he didn't react. He just worked harder. The second year was harder. Clinical rotations had begun and they had started working with real patients. Some patients didn't want to see a black student doctor. "I want someone experienced," they would say. Each time, Demetrius would politely explain his qualifications, but his heart kept breaking. The hardest moments were with white patient families. When explaining treatment plans, families would constantly look at white student doctors, directing their questions to them. They acted as if Demetrius wasn't there. These microaggressions had become part of daily life. In his third year during surgical rotation, he met cardiac surgery. When he watched his first heart surgery, he was mesmerized. This was the most complex, most delicate, most vital surgical field. Cardiac surgeons were the elite of the medical world, and Demetrius wanted to be part of it. The head of cardiac surgery, Dr. Richard Steinberg, was in his 60s, white and old-school surgeon. When Demetrius started his rotation, Dr. Steinberg looked at him with suspicion. "Surgery requires manual skill," he had said. "Not everyone can do it. Especially, delicate hands are needed." But Demetrius's talents were undeniable. His hands were like gold, his concentration was perfect. His approach to patients was both professional and compassionate. In the first week, he only had permission to observe, but in the second week, he started making simple sutures. In the third week, he entered small operations as an assistant surgeon. Dr. Steinberg's attitude slowly began to change. Demetrius's natural talent, learning speed, and commitment to patient safety impressed him. At the end of the rotation, Dr. Steinberg had told him, "You were born to be a surgeon. Apply for cardiac surgery residency." Throughout his fourth year, Demetrius focused on cardiac surgery. He took extra rotations, did research projects, read surgical technique books. As graduation approached, he applied for cardiac surgery residency. This was one of the most competitive specialty fields in America. Thousands applied each year, only hundreds were accepted. During the interview process, he faced difficulties. Some program directors would ask him, "Cardiac surgery is a very stressful field. Are you sure you can handle it?" This question was never asked to white candidates. Each time, Demetrius stayed calm and explained his experiences, motivation, and vision. When the results were announced, he had been accepted to Emory. Dr. Steinberg called him to his office to congratulate him. "You'll be successful in this program. But it won't be easy. Be ready." Cardiac surgery residency was a grueling 5-year process. The first year involved working 18 hours a day, night shifts, weekends spent at the hospital. It was physically and mentally extremely challenging. Residents were constantly tested. Mistakes weren't tolerated. Perfection was expected. Demetrius faced extra difficulty during this process. Some senior surgeons trusted him less, questioned him more. "Are you sure you can do this procedure?" Questions kept coming. Doubtful questions that were never asked to white residents. The hardest period was the second year. One night on call, he was assisting in a complex emergency heart surgery. The attending physician, Dr. Patterson, had yelled at Demetrius during the operation. "What are you doing? This isn't how it's done." "Maybe this job is too hard for you." The operating room had fallen silent. Everyone felt the tension. Demetrius didn't react at all, just continued doing his job. The surgery was successful, the patient was saved. But that night, Demetrius cried at home. The first and last time. The third year was critical. He was now performing independent small surgeries. His responsibility was increasing. During this period, his biggest supporter became Dr. Sarah Martinez. Young Latina cardiac surgeon. She too had faced similar challenges as a minority. Demetrius, Dr. Martinez had said one day, "You're very talented. But being talented isn't enough here. You also need to be resilient. Because you'll always be told you need to prove more." Thanks to Dr. Martinez's mentorship, Demetrius regained his confidence. The fourth and fifth years were much better. He was now entering complex surgeries, teaching young residents, managing research projects. He finished residency with honors. At graduation, Dr. Steinberg gave a speech. "There's someone special in this class. Demetrius Thompson is not only an excellent surgeon, but also an exemplary physician. Working with him has been a privilege." After graduation, he went to Cleveland Clinic for fellowship. It was one of the world's most prestigious cardiac surgery centers. There he trained for 2 more years, learned the most complex cases, gained international experience. Advanced surgical techniques, minimally invasive methods, robotic surgery, he learned everything. He also faced racism in Cleveland, but he was more experienced now. He could ignore microaggressions and focus on his work. His goal was to be the best surgeon. Nothing else mattered. When he finished fellowship in 2015 and returned to Emory, he was now a fully fledged cardiac surgeon. His first day was exciting. He would take his own patients, perform independent surgeries, build his career. His first years were difficult. Some patient families didn't want to see a black doctor. "Is there another doctor available?" Questions would come. Each time, Demetrius would politely explain his background, experience, success rates. Most of the time, he could convince them. When he couldn't, he would transfer to other colleagues, not making it an ego issue. Once an elderly patient had said, "I don't trust black doctors." Demetrius had stayed calm. "I understand your concerns. Let's find you a doctor you'll be most comfortable with." Later, he learned that the patient had been operated on by another doctor but experienced complications. They called Demetrius to the family. He saved the patient. Over time, his reputation grew. When success rates spoke, patients began requesting him. In 2018, he became associate director of the department. In 2020, he was elected as a member of the American College of Surgeons. In 2021, he made Atlanta's top 40 under 40 list. But success didn't completely eliminate racism. It made it more subtle, more hidden. He sometimes had problems with operating room teams. Some nurses would question his orders in ways they would never do to white colleagues. Some anesthesia technicians would implement Demetrius's requests late. His biggest problem was with assistant nurse Sarah Mitchell, 35 years old from Georgia, 12 years of experience, but she constantly displayed hostile behavior toward Demetrius. She would question directives, bring alternative suggestions, display behaviors that would undermine his authority during surgery. Sarah's behaviors were subtle but constant. When Demetrius said 15 blade, she would say, "Dr. Peterson usually prefers 10 blade." When he asked for sutures, she would ask, "Isn't this too fine for this case?" She would question every request, criticize every decision. Demetrius had spoken with Sarah's supervisor several times. But Sarah was clever. She didn't do open racism. She just passed it off as professional concerns. "Some of Dr. Thompson's preferences don't align with standard protocol," she would say. It was hard to prove, but easy to feel. Other operating room nurses worked with Demetrius without problems. Sarah's problem was obvious, but no one could openly address it. In the hospital's political environment, racism accusations were very sensitive topics. Until that critical Tuesday morning. The patient was 67-year-old Robert Davidson, white, a retired banker. He had suffered a severe heart attack, had serious blockages in 3 arteries. A triple bypass surgery was needed, complex but a routine procedure for Demetrius. The Davidson family had specifically requested Demetrius because they had heard of his reputation. During the pre-operative evaluation, Davidson's wife Margaret had told Demetrius, "Doctor, we're entrusting my husband's life to your hands. We trust you." This trust both honored Demetrius and made him feel responsible. When he entered the operating room at 7:30 a.m., the team was ready. Anesthesiologist Dr. Kim Park, operating room technician James Wilson, assistant surgeon Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, and assistant nurse Sarah Mitchell. There was nothing unusual. It was a normal heart surgery team. "Good morning, team," said Demetrius while putting on his mask and washing his hands. "Mr. Davidson's condition is stable, EKG normal. We're planning triple bypass. Estimated time 4 hours. Any questions?" Dr. Park explained the anesthesia plan. Dr. Rodriguez discussed the assistant surgeon role. James Wilson checked technician equipment. Sarah nodded silently. Everyone seemed ready. The surgery began at 800. The first hour passed without problems. The chest was open, connected to the heart-lung machine. Blocked arteries were identified. Demetrius's hands worked with perfect coordination. 15 years of experience, thousands of surgeries, movements that had become muscle memory. Sarah, 15 blades, said Demetrius. Sarah handed it over but slowly. Dr. Peterson usually uses 10 at this stage. I want 15, said Demetrius in a stern tone. Sarah handed it over silently, but there was discomfort on her face. In the second hour, bypass grafts were being prepared. The most critical stage, connecting new vessels to the heart, a process requiring millimetric precision, where not a single mistake could be made. At this stage, the operating room team needed to work in perfect coordination. Praline suture, said Demetrius. Sarah handed it over but again delayed. Isn't this too thick for this graft? Sarah, said Demetrius impatiently. Please just give me what I asked for. I'm just suggesting. I don't want suggestions right now. I want the instruments I asked for. Tension was rising in the operating room. Dr. Park and Dr. Rodriguez had noticed the situation but weren't intervening. These kinds of team dynamics were common but normal during surgery. In the third hour, the most critical graft connection was being made. At this stage, Demetrius was in full concentration. He was working on the main artery of the heart. A centimeter mistake could cause cardiac arrest. His hands were moving with microscopic precision. Just then, Sarah's cell phone started ringing. Phone ringing in the operating room was absolutely forbidden. It would disrupt the sterile environment and break concentration. Sarah, turn off the phone, said Demetrius sternly. It's my child's school calling. It might be urgent, said Sarah. I said turn it off. I'm trying to save a person's life right now. Sarah turned off the phone, but her morale was down. You don't need to be this aggressive. Aggressive. Demetrius was speaking without taking his hands off the patient's heart. I'm performing surgery. I can't allow anything to break my concentration. Maybe this job is too stressful for you, said Sarah loudly. Now the entire operating room could hear. What do you mean? Said Demetrius in a dangerous tone. Sarah's face reddened, but she continued. Look, I'm not making any personal attack. But let me be clear. I would rather die than be healed by a black doctor's hands. This is my personal preference, and the patient probably thinks the same thing. Everyone in the operating room froze. Dr. Park held her breath. Dr. Rodriguez opened her eyes wide. Technician Wilson's hands holding instruments started trembling. No one expected such an openly racist comment to be made during surgery. Demetrius's heart started pounding wildly. Adrenaline flooded his body, but his hands remained steady on the heart. A second of lost concentration could result in the patient's death. His 15 years of professional discipline kept him standing. Sarah, said Demetrius, his voice controlled but trembling. You're endangering patient safety right now. Speaking like this during surgery is unacceptable. I'm just expressing my opinion. GTO, shouted Demetrius. For the first time in his career, he was shouting during surgery. Get out of the operating room immediately. Sarah was shocked. You can't yell at me like that, James, said Demetrius, turning to the technician, his hands still on the patient. Call security. Have them remove Sarah from here. Now. As Sarah walked toward the door, she muttered, This is a big mistake. You're making a big mistake. After the operating room door closed, there was deep silence. No one knew what to say. The patient's heart was in Demetrius's hands. Life depended on decisions to be made this second. Dr. Thompson, said Dr. Rodriguez gently. Should we continue? Demetrius took a deep breath. His hands were trembling slightly, but he had to continue. This was the time to show his professionalism. Despite racism, despite pressure, despite insults, he would continue to save lives. Yes, he said with determination. Let's continue. Let's complete the surgery Mr. U. Davidson needs. For the next 1.5 hours, Demetrius continued the surgery with perfect concentration. Each graft was meticulously placed. Each connection was made with precision. The patient's heart returned to its own rhythm. Vital signs were stable. The surgery was successfully completed. The surgery ended at 12:30. When the patient was taken to intensive care, his vital signs were perfect. Dr. Rodriguez turned to Demetrius. You showed incredible professionalism. To perform such a perfect surgery under those conditions. She couldn't finish her sentence. The patient's relatives were in the waiting room. Margaret Davidson stood up when she saw Demetrius. Doctor, How is my husband? The surgery was successful, said Demetrius. 3 grafts were successfully placed. Your husband is now in intensive care. His condition is stable. Margaret hugged Demetrius while crying. Thank you, doctor. You saved my husband. But Demetrius's mind wasn't on the surgery. Sarah's words were echoing in his ears. The anger, disappointment, and fatigue he had accumulated for 15 years, all had exploded at that moment. He wouldn't stay silent anymore. He went to the doctor's office, sat at his desk, and began deep thinking. This time was different. Sarah had made racist comments in front of everyone on record. Now no one could say, misunderstanding. His phone rang. It was his wife Valerie, who also worked as an anesthesia technician at another hospital. How did the surgery go? She asked. Demetrius told her everything. Valerie was silent for a long time. This time is different, she finally said. This time she made everyone a witness. No one can hide it anymore. But who will believe me? White nurse, black doctor. You know how it will end. You'll determine how it ends, said Valerie with determination. You've been preparing for this moment for 15 years. Now it's time to speak. That evening, Demetrius thought long and hard. At home, while having dinner with his wife and 2 children, his 12-year-old son Marcus asked him, Dad, why are you sad today? Demetrius looked at his son. Marcus would also face similar racism one day. What example would he set for him? Stay silent and endure. Or stand up and fight. Sometimes, son, said Demetrius, doing the right thing isn't easy. But you still have to do it. The next morning when he came to the hospital, he had made his decision. First, he went to department head Dr. Michael Harrison's office. Harrison was 55 years old, white, an old generation surgeon. But he was fair and supported Demetrius. Michael, said Demetrius, I have an urgent situation I need to discuss with you. He told him everything. Harrison listened, frowned, took notes. Demetrius, this is a very serious allegation. Are you sure? There are 4 witnesses in the operating room. Everyone heard. Dr. Park, Dr. Rodriguez, Technician Wilson. They're all witnesses. I'll talk to Sarah. But you know, these situations usually… Michael, said Demetrius, interrupting. I've been working at this hospital for 15 years. I have a reputation, I have a success record. If you gloss over this incident, I'll speak to the media. Harrison's face changed. Are you threatening me? No, I'm informing you. You've always said there's no tolerance for racism in this hospital. Now it's time to be tested. That afternoon, Sarah Mitchell was placed on administrative leave. The Human Resources Department launched an investigation. Statements were taken from witnesses in the operating room. Everyone said the same thing. Sarah had made openly racist comments endangering patient safety. Dr. Park had said in her statement, in my 15-year career, I had never seen such open racism. Speaking like this during surgery is both unethical and dangerous. Dr. Rodriguez had spoken even more clearly. Dr. Thompson showed perfect professionalism. If it had been another doctor, they would have stopped the surgery halfway. But he put patient safety first. Technician Wilson was in shock. I can't believe such openly racist words could be said in an operating room. What was done to Dr. Thompson was completely wrong. But this wasn't enough for Demetrius, because he knew this wasn't just an individual problem. This was a systemic problem, and systemic problems required systemic solutions. Friday evening, Demetrius made a critical decision. He called Dr. Harrison. Michael, I want to hold a press conference on Monday. Demetrius, don't do this. We already fired Sarah. What more do you want? I want a comprehensive anti-racism education program at the hospital, mandatory bias training, anonymous complaint mechanism, and diversity program. This is a very big change. It needs to go through the board of directors. Then come to the board on Monday too, because I'm going to hold the press conference. That weekend, Demetrius planned his media strategy. He met with his lawyer, prepared a press statement, wrote speech notes. This wasn't just personal revenge. This was an opportunity to create change in the entire healthcare system. Monday morning, reporters from Atlanta Journal, Constitution, Channel 2 News, CNN, and national media organizations were in front of the hospital. Demetrius wore a dark blue suit, with his lawyer and wife Valerie beside him. Hospital management was in panic mode. I've been working at this hospital for 15 years, said Demetrius, addressing the microphone. I've saved the lives of over 3,000 patients. I've broken success records in the cardiac surgery department. But last Tuesday, an assistant nurse said during surgery that she would rather die than be healed by a black doctor's hands. It had a bombshell effect in the media. This isn't just personal racism, Demetrius continued. This is a systemic problem that threatens patient safety. If healthcare workers can disrespect doctors because of their race, patient care quality deteriorates. The press conference became national news. It went viral on social media. The hashtag #JusticeForThompson became trending. Thousands of healthcare workers shared similar experiences. It was the main news on CN that evening. It was broadcast with the headline, "Racism in the Operating Room, Black Doctor Faces Open Discrimination." He gave a live interview on MSNBC. Even Fox News covered the story. Hospital management was in panic mode. The board of directors held an emergency meeting. Media pressure, patient family concerns, sponsor company reactions. Pressure was coming from all directions. Within 48 hours, hospital management made the following decisions. 1. Sarah Mitchell was immediately terminated. 2. Mandatory bias and anti-racism training program was started for all hospital personnel. 3. Anonymous discrimination complaint system was established. 4. Diversity and inclusion coordinator position was created. 5. Official apology was made to Dr. Thompson on behalf of the hospital. But this was just the beginning. The story had gained national dimension. The American Medical Association's AMA heard about Demetrius's experience and launched a national campaign. With the slogan, "Racism has no place in healthcare," awareness began to be created nationwide. The Department of Health added anti-racism policies to hospital accreditation standards. Now all hospitals had to meet these standards. Medicare and Medicaid payments were tied to these standards. Hearings were held in Congress. The Health Committee called Demetrius as a witness. He spoke on Capitol Hill. Healthcare is a human right, and this right must be provided without discrimination based on race, gender, or religion. 6 months later, Demetrius received the Physician of the Year award from the National Medical Association. At the ceremony, he spoke, "I'm not accepting this award just for myself. I'm accepting it for every healthcare worker who spoke up about racism they silently endured for the first time." Medical schools added racism and bias topics to their curricula. Demetrius Thompson case began to be taught as a case study in medical schools. Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, prestigious medical institutions invited Demetrius as a speaker. He became recognized as an expert on racism and patient safety in healthcare. Today, Dr. Demetrius Thompson is head of cardiac surgery at Emory, the first Black doctor to reach this position in hospital history. On his office wall hangs a photo from that critical surgery day. Below it reads, "Courage under pressure." In Atlanta, there's now a procedure called the Thompson Protocol, an operating room racism prevention and reporting system. Similar systems have been established in 47 states. Thanks to this protocol, over 200 racism cases have been detected and prevented. What happened to Sarah Mitchell? She lost her job, received a ban from working in healthcare. She's now working in another sector in Georgia. She never expressed remorse, never apologized. She refuses to speak with the media. Mr. Davidson is still healthy 2 years after surgery. He and Demetrius became friends. "Dr. Thompson saved my life," he says. What happened in that operating room was terrible, but his professionalism was perfect. The Davidson family invites the Thompson family to their home. The two families became close friends. "Racism is something learned," says Margaret Davidson. "Then it can be unlearned too." Most importantly, Demetrius's courage inspired thousands of healthcare workers. It gave them courage not to stay silent about racism, to protect patient safety, to fight for systemic change. Dr. Martinez, Demetrius's former mentor, says, "Demetrius is not only a great surgeon but also a change leader. Thanks to his courage, the healthcare system became more just." Demetrius's story also gained international dimension. The World Health Organization appointed him as Health Equity Ambassador. He gave conferences in many countries, Europe, Asia, Africa. "When my heart raced in the operating room that day," Demetrius now says, "I had two choices: stay silent or speak up. If I had stayed silent, only I would have been harmed. Because I spoke up, the system changed." At Emory Hospital, 89 Black doctors now work. In 2015, there were only 23. 35% of the nursing staff is from minority groups. Thanks to diversity programs, staff satisfaction increased by 40%. This change, called the Thompson effect, wasn't limited to just one hospital. Healthcare institutions nationwide made similar reforms. Racism cases and patient complaints decreased by 60%. The most gratifying result is the young generation of doctors. Doctors now graduating from medical school graduate having received anti-racism training. They're called the Demetrius generation. His son Marcus is now 15 years old, aiming for medical school. I want to be like my dad, he says. I want both to save lives and defend justice. Demetrius's message is simple but powerful. Racism is a learned behavior. Then it can be unlearned too. But this requires courage. The courage to speak up. After that day, says Demetrius, I never experienced racism in any of my surgeries. Because everyone knows I won't stay silent, and breaking this silence gives others courage too. Is there still racism in the American healthcare system? Yes. But now there are people like Demetrius Thompson fighting the system and winning. If I hadn't spoken up that day, says Demetrius, how many more patients would have been harmed by people like Sarah? How many more doctors would have silently endured? Speaking up is a risk, but staying silent is a bigger risk. Today, Dr. Demetrius Thompson is not only an excellent cardiac surgeon, but also a social justice warrior. While saving lives with a scalpel in his hand, he's also changing the system with his voice. Is there a Dr. Demetrius Thompson inside you? Do you have the courage to speak up when you see something wrong? Because sometimes a single word in an operating room can change the entire system. And sometimes the biggest surgery might be removing racism from the system.